In a small, run-down village, Peter and Mary lived in a tiny hut made of rusted iron sheets and patched-up walls. They were a poor couple, surviving on menial jobs and odd tasks for the wealthier families in the area. Peter was a street cleaner, while Mary did laundry for neighbors, earning just enough to scrape by. Their joy knew no bounds when Mary gave birth to a baby boy they named Samuel. Though they had nothing, Samuel was their everything, a symbol of hope in their otherwise bleak lives. But poverty shadowed their joy. Mary often boiled wild herbs and maize porridge for meals, and Samuel's earliest food was a thin gruel, made from the cheapest grains they could afford. As he grew older, his meals often came from leftovers Peter collected at different hotels in the nearby town. Every evening, Peter brought home scraps, half-eaten bread, chicken bones, and stale rice wrapped in brown paper. Mary would reheat them, carefully picking out anything edible to fill her son's belly. When Samuel turned 5, Peter and Mary decided it was time for him to go to school. With great sacrifice, they saved enough money to enroll him in a small Nazarene school nearby. Samuel was excited, but his joy was short-lived. At school, Samuel's worn-out clothes and shabby appearance made him an easy target for mockery. His classmates avoided him, whispering behind his back, calling him a scrap boy, because they knew his food often came from hotel leftovers. Lunchtime was the hardest, while other children enjoyed warm meals. Samuel quietly ate his cold scraps from home. But he endured, determined to learn and change his family's circumstances. At home, life was no better. Peter and Mary couldn't afford new clothes for him, so Samuel wore the same tattered uniform year after year. During cold seasons, he shivered through the nights, clutching a thin, torn blanket. Despite the challenges, Samuel advanced to secondary school. But here, the struggles grew heavier. The fees were higher, and Peter's job as a street cleaner barely covered their basic needs. Often, Samuel went to school hungry, unable to concentrate in class. His classmates continued to ridicule him, and his teachers were indifferent to his plight. Eventually, the day came when Peter could no longer pay the school fees. Samuel was sent home with a heavy heart, knowing it was the end of his education. He begged his parents to try one more time, but they had nothing left to give. Left with no choice, Samuel made the hardest decision of his life. At just 16, he packed his few belongings in a small, torn bag and left for the city to look for work. He promised his parents he would send money back home to support them. As Samuel walked away from the only home he'd ever known, his heart was filled with both fear and determination. The city was an unknown world, but he knew he had to fight for a better future, not just for himself but for his parents who had sacrificed everything for him. Samuel arrived in the bustling town as the sun dipped below the horizon. The city lights were a stark contrast to the dimly lit nights in his village. His stomach growled as he walked through the crowded streets, clutching his worn-out bag tightly. Determined to find work, Samuel headed to the first place that came to his mind, hotels. With trembling hands, he approached a small restaurant. "Excuse me, sir," he said to the manager, "do you have any work I can do? I can wash dishes, clean tables, or even chop firewood." The manager looked him over, noting his tattered clothes and tired face. "Sorry, boy, we don't need anyone right now." Samuel didn't lose hope. He moved to the next hotel and then the next, repeating the same plea. Each time, the answer was the same: no work here. Hours passed, and Samuel realized he hadn't eaten all day. His legs felt heavy, and despair began to creep in. As night fell, Samuel faced a new problem: he had no place to sleep. Walking along the highway, he searched for a safe spot. His eyes scanned the area until he found a bushy patch near a quiet roadside. He sighed, unrolling the thin sheet he carried on his back. The cold night air bit into his skin, but he wrapped himself tightly, praying for strength to face another day. Back in the village, Peter and Mary knelt on their dirt floor, their hands clasped tightly in prayer. God, please guide Samuel. Bless him with a job and protect him, Mary whispered through tears. Though miles apart, their prayers gave Samuel a glimmer of hope as he drifted into a restless sleep. Morning arrived with the faint glow of the sun warming Samuel's face. He stretched his aching body, folded his sheet, and headed back into town. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but he ignored it, focusing on his mission. As he wandered, something caught his eye: a large, elegant house decorated with intricate carvings and surrounded by lush green gardens. Samuel stopped in his tracks, staring at the grandeur before him. The house radiated wealth and opportunity. Maybe they need someone to clean or help with their work, he thought. With newfound courage, he walked to the massive gate and knocked. The watchman peered through the gate, his stern eyes narrowing. "What do you want, boy?" Samuel hesitated but then spoke. "I'm looking for work, sir. Anything. I can clean, chop firewood, or take care of animals." The watchman studied him for a moment before nodding. "Wait here." He disappeared into the compound and returned a few minutes later. "The boss wants to see you." Samuel's heart pounded as the gate creaked open, revealing a path lined with flowers leading to the grand house. He followed the watchman, his dusty feet leaving faint prints on the polished floor of the entryway. Inside, a middle-aged man with a kind face sat in a plush chair. He gestured for Samuel to come closer. "What brings you here, young man?" Samuel swallowed hard and began to explain. "Sir, I come from a poor family. I left school because we couldn't afford fees. I came to the city to look for work, but I haven't found anything. I'll do anything: cleaning, taking care of animals, anything you need." The man listened intently, his expression softening. "You've had a rough journey," he said. "But you've come to the right place." He turned to one of his workers. "Bring the boy a cup of tea. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days." Samuel's eyes widened as a steaming cup of tea was placed in his hands. The warmth spread through his fingers, and for the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice trembling with gratitude. The man smiled. "You can start working here as my cowherd. It's not an easy job, but it's honest work. I also need you to help around the house when needed." Samuel nodded eagerly. "Thank you, sir. I promise to work hard." The man stood, leading Samuel outside. He showed him the cowshed and explained his daily tasks: feeding the cows, cleaning the shed, and helping in the garden. Despite the challenges ahead, Samuel felt a sense of purpose. That night, as he lay in the small quarters provided for him, he whispered a prayer of thanks. For the first time since arriving in the city, he felt like he belonged. Years passed as Samuel worked tirelessly on his boss's estate. His dedication and hard work earned him the trust of his employer, but with time, Samuel began to notice unusual occurrences around the compound. One evening, as he fed the cows, Samuel felt a chill in the air. He looked up and thought he saw shadowy figures slipping through the compound gates, vanishing into thin air. At first, he dismissed it, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. But as days turned into weeks, the strange events increased. He would hear eerie whispers late at night, sounds of heavy footsteps that had no source, and chilling laughter echoing from empty corners. Samuel confided in his fellow workers. "Have you ever noticed anything strange around here? Like invisible people or odd noises?" The workers exchanged nervous glances before one of them replied, "Samuel, you should focus on your work. Don't ask questions about things you don't understand. We've been here longer than you, and we've accepted the way things are." Samuel realized they were hiding something. He decided to stay quiet, fearing for his job, but the unease lingered. One night, as Samuel slept in his small quarters, loud knocks on his door startled him awake. His co-workers stood outside, urging him to join them for a meeting at the boss's house. "It's important," one of them said. Samuel hesitated. The thought of meeting at such an odd hour felt wrong, but he didn't want to risk losing his job. Reluctantly, he followed them to the house. The workers gathered in the grand living room, where the boss sat in an ornate chair, smiling warmly. "Welcome, everyone," he began. "Tonight, I want to introduce you to some of my closest friends. They've been a part of my success, and now it's time for you to meet them." From the shadows, several well-dressed strangers stepped forward. But as the boss introduced them, their appearances began to change. Their bodies twisted grotesquely, morphing into slithering snakes before vanishing into thin air. Samuel's heart raced, his palms sweating as fear gripped him. "What is this?" he stammered. The boss turned to him, his smile now unnerving. "Don't be afraid, Samuel. You've already joined us, you drank the tea we shared during our meetings. There's no turning back now." Samuel froze. His mind raced back to the cups of tea the boss had often shared with them during gatherings. Was this some form of initiation? Terrified, Samuel stood to leave, but his boss raised a hand. "Relax, Samuel. You've worked hard, and I've called you here tonight to reward you. Wait just a moment, and I'll give you your salary." Samuel thought of his parents and the grinding poverty they endured. The image of their thin faces and torn clothes haunted him. If he walked away now, he would leave empty-handed, with nothing to offer his family. Swallowing his fear, he stayed. Moments later, the boss handed him a suitcase. "Here, Samuel. Inside is your reward for your dedication, $100 million. Use it wisely." Samuel's hands trembled as he opened the suitcase, revealing stacks of crisp bills. His monthly salary had been meager, this amount felt surreal. But the thought of his struggling parents overpowered his fear. He nodded, took the suitcase, and hurried back to his quarters without a word. Morning arrived, and the boss summoned Samuel. "You've worked hard for us. Go visit your parents. Buy them food and clothes. Let them know their son has succeeded." Samuel packed his belongings and left the compound, clutching the suitcase tightly. Before heading home, he stopped at a nearby supermarket. He filled his cart with bags of rice, beans, sugar, and flour. He picked out new clothes and shoes for his parents, imagining their joy when they saw the gift. As he paid for everything and stepped out of the supermarket, the weight of his decision lingered in his mind. With the suitcase in one hand and bags of supplies in the other, Samuel began his journey home, hoping the money he now carried would be the answer to his family's prayers. Samuel's journey home was filled with mixed emotions. As the car stopped at the dusty road leading to his family's house, he saw his parents standing outside, their faces lighting up with joy. His mother, Mary, ran toward him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My son, you've come back to us," she cried. Peter, his father, stood with a proud smile, his voice trembling. "Welcome home, son. We've been praying for you every day." Samuel hugged them both tightly, his heart swelling with gratitude. He handed them the bags of food and clothes, and their tears of joy doubled. "God has truly answered our prayers," Mary said, her voice choked with emotion. For the next 3 days, the family enjoyed the food and celebrated Samuel's success. Peter insisted on inviting neighbors to share in their joy, and for once, their humble home was filled with laughter and hope. When the day came for Samuel to return to his job, his parents prayed over him, their hands firmly placed on his shoulders. "Lord, protect Samuel in all his endeavors," Peter prayed. "Guide him and keep him safe." Samuel boarded the vehicle at the village stage, waving at his parents until they disappeared from sight. After hours of travel, Samuel arrived at the estate late in the night. Exhausted from the journey, he went straight to his quarters, where he collapsed onto the bed. Sleep came quickly, but his dreams were restless, haunted by the events of the previous meeting. Morning arrived, and the compound came alive with workers resuming their daily routines. Samuel pushed his fears aside and focused on his chores, feeding the cows and cleaning the sheds. But as the sun set, a sense of dread began to creep in. As darkness enveloped the estate, the boss summoned everyone for another meeting. Samuel's heart raced. He remembered the terrifying events of the last gathering but decided to attend, fearing what might happen if he didn't. Entering the room, Samuel's blood ran cold. Sitting where the boss usually sat was a massive snake, its scales glistening under the dim light. Its neck was draped around the boss, who sat calmly beneath it. The snake's piercing eyes scanned the room. "Tonight," the boss began, "each of you will receive a mark of acceptance." One by one, the snake extended its head, kissing each worker on the forehead. When it was Samuel's turn, he froze, his legs trembling. He took a step back, but the door behind him was locked. "You cannot leave," the boss said sternly. "It's just a kiss, Samuel. Once you accept it, you'll be free to go." Samuel shook his head. "No. I won't do it." The boss leaned closer, his voice turning cold. "Refuse, and you die here tonight." Hours passed as Samuel resisted, fear battling with the thought of his survival. Finally, trembling and defeated, he nodded. The snake slithered toward him, its cold lips pressing against his forehead. A chill ran down Samuel's spine as the room seemed to darken. The meeting continued with chants and strange rituals Samuel didn't understand. When it ended, everyone dispersed silently to their quarters. In the solitude of his room, Samuel sat on the edge of his bed, his hands shaking. He felt a heavy weight on his chest, as though he had betrayed himself and his faith. Tears streamed down his face as regret consumed him. He knelt beside his bed, clasping his hands tightly. "Lord, I don't know what I've gotten myself into. Please forgive me and protect me. Guide me out of this darkness." As Samuel prayed, a sense of calm began to wash over him, though his fears lingered. He knew he had taken a step he could never undo, but he hoped that his faith would provide him with a way out. Weeks passed, and Samuel carried on with his duties on the estate, though fear and regret clung to him like a shadow. One evening, as he finished feeding the cows, the boss called for another meeting. The tone of the announcement sent chills down Samuel's spine. It felt heavier, more ominous than before. Gathering his courage, Samuel joined the other workers in the meeting room. This time, the atmosphere was suffocating. The dim light cast eerie shadows, and the boss's voice was colder, commanding absolute silence. "This meeting is not like the others," the boss began, his eyes scanning the room. "Tonight, I must share the final truth with you. Wealth comes at a price. Each of you will be required to make a choice. To secure your future, you must sacrifice someone from your family. You have until the next meeting to decide." Gasps filled the room. Samuel felt his knees weaken. A sacrifice. His heart sank as the weight of the word settled in. The boss continued, "Those who refuse will face consequences. Choose wisely, for your time is limited." Samuel sat in stunned silence, his thoughts racing. He couldn't fathom the idea of betraying his family. His parents had sacrificed so much for him, they were his foundation, his reason for enduring life's hardships. No matter what they plan, Samuel whispered to himself, "I will not let evil prevail. I will find a way out of this." Around him, his coworkers exchanged fearful glances. Many seemed resigned, their eyes hollow with despair. Samuel's resolve, however, burned brighter. He clung to the belief that his fate would shield him from the darkness surrounding him. Far away, in Samuel's village, his mother, Mary, was stirred from her sleep by a vivid dream. In it, she saw her son surrounded by shadows, his face pale with fear. A voice in the dream whispered, "Pray for him. He is in danger." Startled awake, Mary immediately knelt by her bedside. "Lord, protect my son from any harm. Wherever he is, surround him with your light and shield him from evil." Her voice trembled, but her faith was strong. She prayed until dawn, tears streaming down her face as she begged for her son's safety. Back at the estate, the meeting dragged on as the boss and his snake-like companions elaborated on their demands. The workers sat in uneasy silence, their faces etched with fear and confusion. "Go now," the boss finally said, his voice low and menacing. "Think carefully about what I've told you. Make your choice, and be ready when the time comes." The door was unlocked, and the workers were dismissed. Samuel walked slowly to his quarters, his heart heavy with dread. He didn't know what the future held, but he was determined not to compromise his principles. That night, as Samuel lay in bed, he silently prayed, "Lord, I know you're watching over me. Show me a way out of this darkness. Protect my family, and give me the strength to do what's right."